Okay, so let's begin today's class. Today, the topic is from class 12 English, the Memoirs of Chota Sahib. So, here, let me just give you a brief introduction of who is the author of the chapter. The author of the chapter is John Rowntree. John Rowntree was an English forest conservator. He worked in India before independence, and after independence, he goes back to England and he takes up the role of a journalist. So, this part that we are going to read is from the book, and it is just an extract of a greater part. Now, in this particular extract, John Rowntree is going to tell about his experience of Assam. So, when he was in Assam, when he was the British forest conservator, okay, and when he was in Guwahati, at that time he had experienced many different things, okay, and it is about those experiences that he's going to talk about. And in this part, this part that we are going to read, the chapter is going to focus strictly on Guwahati. Okay, so let's begin the chapter. John Rowntree was the last British forest conservator. That was the pre-independence era. And when he was in Assam, when he was posted in Assam, he was appointed a bungalow. He was given a bungalow to stay in. And when he first came to Assam, when he first arrived in Guwahati, at that time the PWD workers, they had made arrangements for the new forest officer to come and stay. And they had he was given a bungalow, and the PWD, they were in charge of the bungalow, and they had as a sort of the preparation, they had given it lime wash, okay, lime wash to the walls, and they had put on earth oil on the wooden frames so as to save them from insects and rodents, okay. Now, the time that he talks about is winter time, okay. During the winter, we all know that the rivers, the channel, they become narrow, okay, because the water dries up, there is no rain, okay, there is less water, and because of that, the channels become narrow. It was can call it like a superstition, okay. So it was a belief of the people of those time that when the channel would entirely dry up, okay, when the channel would completely dry up. Actually, what was this scenario? During the winter, when the channel, the river, okay, they become narrow, okay. So when they become narrow, even if in the most driest of the driest year, the channel, there will be a very small or a narrow channel still flowing, okay. It would not completely dry up. But there was a superstition then when the British would leave India, that on that season, okay, then the entire channel would completely dry up. That means the north bank and the south bank would come together, okay. The river, the narrow channel would completely dry, and the land would appear, dry land would appear, okay. Now, that is a superstition, and whether it actually happened or not, we cannot say, because John Rowntree had already left India after independence, okay. So it was a belief that when British would leave India, the channel would entirely dry up. Okay, so that was the belief, which actually we never got to know, okay, what actually happened. Now, when speaking about Guwahati, Guwahati was the gateway to the northeast. Anyone coming up to Kolkata, anyone going to Shillong, they have to pass through Guwahati. And whenever travelers, they travel long distances, and sometimes they just stop by in Guwahati for resting. Okay, so when they were in the bungalow, they used to have visitors from different places, travelers from different places who would just come up there and stay there. Okay, overnight, they will just stay there overnight. These were the usual visitors, which were generally human. Sometimes they had unusual visitors, and these visitors were tigers who were washed out by the flood. Okay, these tigers, were from the forest, and because of floods, they used to just come there. Okay, the water would carry them to that place, and in the morning when these people, they would wake up, they would just see the pug marks. Okay, so how do they know that tiger is present? The tiger is not going to roam around in in the presence of human. So when they wake up in the morning and they just look around, they see the pug marks. Pug marks are the marks of the paws of a tiger. Okay, so when they see the pug marks, they get to know that okay, the tiger was there. Okay, now next thing is the bungalow. Let's talk about the bungalow now. The bungalow where he was, like the bungalow where he was staying, the bungalow had a portico. Portico is an extended platform, a raised platform, okay, which also serves as a balcony. Okay, so this portico, okay, it served as a carport. Like they could use it as to park the cars underneath. Okay, so it served as a carport as well as it served as a balcony, because from the upper grounds, okay, from the upper floor, okay, you can use it like a balcony, and from there you used to get a very mesmerizing view, very beautiful view, and the view was of the mighty Brahmaputra spread across, and beyond in the horizon, okay, after where what is the horizon? Horizon is the point or the line where the earth and the sky they meet. Actually, they don't meet, they just appear to be meeting. Okay, it would be wrong if I say they meet. Now, it is in the horizon that, like beyond the river, there is the mighty Himalayas. Okay, you can see the Himalayas. Okay, that was the view. In front, there was the river, and beyond the river, there was the hills. Okay, the Himalaya hills. And there was an island. The island was termed as Peacock Island. Most probably, it was named by the British officials because the appearance or the structure of the island, it appeared as if it was the open, like a thing of the peacock. Okay, I believe all of you have seen peacock, okay? When they open up their feathers, okay, the design that it creates, okay, the same design you could see in the Peacock Island, okay, because it was covered with trees and it was green, okay, and beyond and on top of the like canopy of the trees, slightly a dome kind of a structure appeared, okay, and it was actually a Hindu temple, a Shiva temple, and the Peacock Island that we are talking about is none other than Umananda. Okay, so if you want to see, you can just go and surf it. Okay, Umananda from Guwahati. Okay. Now after that, let's talk about the condition. Okay, now on the north bank, okay, where the bungalow was, there was a slight problem of drinking water. Okay, so the water there was generally very muddy, and in order to clean the water, they used to use alarm, ALUM, alarm. Now, what is an alarm? Alarm is generally a kind of a thing that is used to purify the water. Okay, so you can just surf it around and you can see. Next, let's talk about the North Bank. Now, what is North Bank? What is South Bank? We all know that rivers, they have two banks, right? So the river that we are talking about is the mighty Brahmaputra River. The Brahmaputra River, okay, it has two banks. The bank on the northern side is termed as North Bank, and the bank on the southern part is termed as South Bank. Am I clear now? Now, see, the North Bank, the condition, okay, of the North Bank and the condition of the South Bank are completely different. North Bank has higher terrains, like long distances to travel, okay, like different blocks of reserve forest, and like steep hills, okay, to climb. But on the South Bank, the condition is completely the opposite. Okay, we'll come to the South Bank later. Let's understand what is the North Bank first. Now, the condition of the North Bank is that during the winter season, North Bank is a very beautiful place. It's a perfect place to live, okay, to stay, to spend your vacations, okay, and which is why most probably the governors of that time, they used to like write a letter to the forest officer, okay, who is John Roundtree, to make arrangements for like arranging a camp, to make a camp, to create a camp, and where they will be like celebrating the Christmas, okay, and that is what they generally used to do. Now, North Bank is a very pleasant place to live in, and what kind of animals do we find there? On the North Bank, like there are many bheels. Okay, the bheels are actually lakes. Okay, so you can find here wild fowls and peafowl. Okay, then animals like sloth bear, cheetal. Cheetal is a kind of a deer that you find in Assam, the white spotted deer, and mahashir. Mahashir is a freshwater fish. If you remember from the chapter Kurg, okay, the same fish was mentioned there as well. It is a freshwater fish, mahashir. Okay, so now we have wild fowls, we have peafowl, we have sloth bear. Sloth bear, I believe you remember from Bruno Baba. Okay, Bond of Love chapter. Okay, now we have cheetal. Cheetal is a deer, and mahashir. Mahashir is a freshwater fish. Okay, so these are the animals that you generally find in the North Bank. Now, there is another incident that John Roundtree tells us about. What is that? That is, once a European couple, okay, a European couple, they started, like a kind of a startup kind of thing. Okay, they planned to have a matchstick factory, or most probably they already had a matchstick factory. And for the matchstick factory, they would need the raw materials. And where would they get the raw materials from? So, in order to get the raw materials, they took a land on lease. Okay, they took a particular area on lease, and there they planted simul trees. Okay, simul trees, those big trees with red flowers. Okay, you can surf it on the net. Okay, so they planted simul trees, some simul plants. Okay, so from where they would get the wood to for their matchsticks. Okay, now what happened actually, it is the forest area, and like the deers would be coming around and they would just graze out all the simul plants. Okay, so what they did, they structured a like a electric fence around. They built an electric fence around the entire piece of land. Okay, so that the deers won't come in. Okay, but it was a failed like expedition, because the deers, they just jump, like they could jump really very high, and they used to jump over the fence. Okay, come in, eat all the simul plants, and then they would just jump out and leave. Okay, so that was a like failed venture by this European couple, and that is the incident that he has already mentioned here. And but there is one more thing that you cannot miss out. It's slightly painful. Actually, what happened? John Roundtree, maybe most probably while he was on a routine, like roundup. Okay, he just went there, and by mistake he might have touched the electric fence, and because of which he got, like the you could understand like what kind of a experience that could have been. Really a very bad and painful experience, obviously. Next, I was telling that North Bank is a very beautiful place to live in, but that is only during the winters. During the monsoon season, the North Bank is not a place you would like to be. And you know why? Because during the monsoon season, the entire area would flood up. Okay, the entire area will be filled with floods. The red soil it would make very difficult for anyone to travel from one place to another, because the roads would be very, very slippery. And let me tell you, in those days, John Roundtree has already mentioned that in those days, Jeep was not invented. We all know that for off-roading, we need a Jeep kind of a vehicle to go on this kind of places. But during those days, Jeep was not invented. So the vehicle that they used were not that much reliable during the monsoon season, when the roads used to be very, very slippery. Now, the problem is not just flood. There is one more problem, and that is the problem of malaria. During the monsoon season, the mosquitoes, they just multiply like anything, and then they carry this malaria. Okay, and in those days, if you don't get proper treatment at the right time, so it could be fatal for you. Okay, it could be a deadly thing for us. Now, because of these two things, the flood and malaria, North Bank in the monsoon was a very difficult place to live in. Okay, and also very difficult to travel from one place to another. Now, there is one more thing, like they used to create bamboo bridges. If they have to travel from one side of the river to the other side of the river, they create bamboo bridges. Now, these bamboo bridges were generally very strong, very, very strong structure. But what happens during the monsoon? These bridges used to be washed away by the floods. Okay, so on one occasion, he was traveling by a horse. Okay, John Roundtree, I'm talking about John Roundtree. So John Roundtree was traveling on a horse, and then the level of the water increased so much that he had to just get down from the back of the croup of the horse. Croup is the back end of the horse, so he had to get back to there, and he had to hold the tail of the horse, and he used the tail of the horse as a rudder. You know what is a rudder? Rudder is a device, equipment, or you can say a steering device. Okay, that is used in a boat. Okay, so with the help of which you can turn the boat to right or to the left. Okay, so now he is on the horseback. He is holding the tail of the horse and using the tail as a rudder to turn the horse to the right or to the left. Now the device works like this. If you want to go to the right, then you have to turn the tail to the left. And if you want to go to the left, then you have to turn the tail to the right. So it works in an opposite direction. Okay, just like in a boat. Okay. Now that is the horse part. And the second thing, they have to travel. When they used to travel, they also used a marboat. So do you know what is a marboat? Marboat is actually, before explaining marboat, let me tell you one thing. Boats are generally very unstable, isn't it? Because the structure of the boat is like this. So when the boat is on the water, it becomes very unstable. Okay, if you slightly put a weight on the left hand side, it will tilt to the left. If you put more weight on the right hand side, it will tilt to the right. So boats are generally very unstable. So in order to solve this problem, what they used to do, they used to bring two boats together. Okay, that would give more stability, and they would place wooden planks on top of the boat. On top of the boat, they would put wooden planks. Wooden planks, you know what the wooden planks? Like long boards of wood. Okay, they would place them on top of the on both the boats, and they would place them adjacently, place the wooden planks, and that would give it a very firm like position. Okay, standing on the water. Okay, now it was more stable, and because it is more stable, they could put on more weights. They could transport vehicles and other heavier equipments on top of the marboard. Now these marboards are operated in two ways. First, they used to paddle them with a oar. Okay, or they could use a rope that was tied from the from one end to the other end. Okay, so they either use the paddle to paddle the boat, or they use the rope. Okay, the ropeway kind of thing. Okay, so these are the two ways how it is operated. So now that was about the marboat. Okay, so next is traveling during the monsoon. Now I have already said that during the monsoon, North Bank is not a very good place to live in, and it is also not very good to travel during the monsoon. It is very difficult because of the slippery roads and other things. Okay. Now the author and his family, they were traveling on the monsoon in the monsoon. Okay. So when they were traveling, the roads were slippery, and what happened? The car that they were in skidded. Okay, first one tire, then the other tire, and finally it slipped and fell 6 feet below. Now just imagine how much would be 6 feet. Okay, the car fell 6 feet below into a paddy field. Okay, and thankfully nobody were injured. Okay, and on one more incident, okay, the car was driving on the road. They couldn't see the ramp. There was a construction going on in the road, and they couldn't see the ramp, and the car flew off. Okay, took a leap. Okay, and the ramp was around 6 inches. So remember, the car fell from 6 feet from the road and fell into the paddy field. That was 6 feet and 6 feet. Okay, and on another occasion, there was a ramp 6 inches high, and the car was coming, and it hit and it flew. Okay, and then it finally landed. And on both these occasions, nobody was injured. You know why? Because on both these occasions, the car was completely stuffed with people and things. On the car, there was the author himself. He was driving. His wife, his child. Okay, the Aya is a nurse. Okay, for the child, and then they had servants. Okay, it's just written servants, so we do not know how many number. I cannot give the number. But whatever it is, like we have seen, like the author, his wife, the child, the Aya, and servants. Let's assume like 2 or 3 servants. So that makes six to seven people in a car. 6 to 7 people in a car, and also there was the camping equipments kept in the car itself. So we can imagine like the car was tightly packed, and because of which nobody was injured. Okay, luckily enough, on both these occasions. Okay, now that was the description of the North Bank. Now let's shift our attention to the South Bank. The South Bank comparatively is a better place to live in because the distances were very less. If you want to go from one place to another, you don't have to travel long distances. And the hills, the terrains were smaller. Okay, there is no steep climb. Okay, no high hill to climb to reach another destination. Okay, and plus the entire reserve forest was in a single block. Okay, so you can imagine like that was a very like easy to operate kind of a thing. Okay, for a forest officer in those days. Now, on the South Bank, there were two bungalows. Okay, in two places, two locations. First location is Rajapara. Second location is Kulsi. Rajapara and Kulsi. Okay. Now, the first location. Let's talk about the first location, that is in Rajapara. Rajapara, like there is a bungalow in Rajapara, but in Kulsi also there is a bungalow. But the difference is in Rajapara, in the bungalow, in the ceiling of the bungalow, there lived bats. Okay. Now these bats, they were small in size. Okay, but they were like lots in number. Okay, there were many bats in the ceiling. Okay, they used to live in the ceiling. Now the problem is these bats, they used to leave their excreta, their droppings on the ceiling, okay, which used to give a fusty kind of a smell. So it was a very pungent kind of smell. So it is very uncomfortable to live in the Rajapara bungalow, okay. But there were also bigger bats. But these bats, the bigger ones, they don't live in the ceiling. Rather, they lived on trees. And these big bats, okay, they survived on fruits. So he has termed them as fruit-eating bats. Now these bats were larger so as to like when they spread their wings, okay, if you spread their wings, it would measure 5 feet. Okay, so those were the larger bats and they were less smelly compared to the bats living in the ceiling of Rajapara bungalow. Okay, and after that, um, just a minute. Okay, so welcome back. So in the Rajapara bungalow, after the bats, there was a bheel. Okay, now what is a bheel? I have already said a bheel is a lake. But this bheel is not a natural, or we can say natural actually. It was created, okay, after an earthquake. There was an earthquake and a piece of land, it went down. Okay, it went down and creating a kind of a crater kind of structure. Okay, where the rainwater got accumulated and eventually it became a bheel, okay, a lake. But the trees, okay, that were present there, the trees they died, but their branches were coming out of the water like skeletons. That used to give an airy kind of a feeling, like ghostly kind of a feeling to the place. Next, there was another bungalow that was at Kulsi. Okay, now the bungalow at Kulsi was a better place to live in comparison to the Rajapara bungalow. Actually, both the bungalows were same, but because of the bats and their pungent smell, it was very difficult to, it was very uncomfortable to stay in the Rajapara bungalow. But at Kulsi, well, Kulsi, the bungalow was a very pleasant place and it was a very beautiful place to live in. Okay, now near the bungalow, there was a teak cultivation. Teak cultivation. Now, these teak plants were planted 60 years ago and they are almost mature and they need to be cut down and sold in the market. But these teak trees were not so much in demand as the Burmese teak because the quality of the wood, of Burmese tree, of the Burma, okay, sorry, not Burma actually, it's Bhutan, sorry, my mistake. So the quality of the teak of Bhutan was better. Okay, it was better than the quality of trees of the teak trees in Assam, in India. Okay, so most probably that's why it was not cut down. And there was also a rubber plantation. Okay, there was also a rubber plantation, and this rubber plantation also was deserted because now after the coming of the para rubber, which is better than the the rubber that was extracted from the rubber trees. Okay, the term used to describe the rubber trees or to refer to the rubber trees is ficus elastica, which is an epiphyte, okay, which grows on a host tree. Okay, that is an epiphyte. So here the plantation is also deserted and nobody no longer uses to tap into the plants to get the rubber because this rubber is no longer in demand in the market because of the presence of the para rubber. And that is why when you look around, these trees are letting down aerial roots which reach to the ground. And with this description, the chapter comes to an end. So that was all for today. If you have any doubt, kindly reach out to me. Thank you.